And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his own image, and called his name Seth. Genesis 5:3. Information in Book 2, Adam and Eve, explains that Seth was conceived, then born 7 years after the death of Abel. Adam also named Seth. That means God has heard my prayer, his sadness over Abel's death, and has delivered me out of my affliction. But it also means power and strength. Following the deaths of Adam and Eve, Seth became the head of the house of Adam. He and his descendants continued to live on God's holy mountain and continued on in the priesthood. After Seth died, the headship was then passed on to Enos, then to Kenan, to Mahalalel, to Jared, to Enoch, to Methuselah, to Lamech, and then to Noah, who begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After the birth of Seth and Achlia's son Enos, then men began to invoke the Lord by name, Genesis 4:26, and thus began the establishment of deity worship and the struggle between evil and good on earth among mankind. The struggle in the Middle East between the children of Seth and the children of Cain was a microcosm. Satan and his fallen angels established their rule over the children of Cain and built a magnificent civilization at the foot of the mountain, complete with music and strong drink, which served to increase the lust among them. When Baruch asked to see the tree through which the serpent deceived Eve and Adam, an angel explained to Baruch that the tree was the grape, the vine. The tree is sinful desire, which Satanael spread over Eve and Adam. And because of this, God has cursed the vine, because Satanael had planted it, and by the vine he deceived the protoplast Adam and Eve. Satan and his co-conspirators bequeathed knowledge of the worst kind upon mankind. And when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. Then sin increased among them greatly, until a man married his own daughter or mother, or the daughter of his father's sister, until there was no distinction of relationship, and they no longer knew what was iniquity. And Satan taught them to make dyeing stuffs for garments of diverse patterns, and made them understand how to dye crimson and purple and whatnot. And the sons of Cain who wrought all this, and shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel, gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor, with horns and gorgeous dresses and horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Book 2, Adam and Eve, 28:13 and 14. By the time Enos was 800 years old, Cain, who had married his sister, Awan, in the Book of Jubilees, had a large progeny, for they married frequently, being given to animal lusts, until the land below the mountain was filled with them. Book 2, Adam and Eve, 12:16. When Jared became the head of the family of Seth, he admonished his people to not descend the mountain and join the children of Cain, who hung about at the foot of the mountain day and night, to tempt the descendants of Seth to come down. However, in time most gave in to the temptation, and defected and went down from God's holy mountain, and joined them. After the death of Jared, only Enoch, Methuselah, and Lamech, Noah, and Noah's family were left on the mountain. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis 5:24. After Enoch became God's scribe, he wrote down all that was revealed to him in the secrets of the creation in 366 books, and was then allowed to return to earth and give the books to his sons and to admonish them about what was to come. Jude 14. And Enoch, also the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, Behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000s of his saints, to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. These are murmurers, complainers, walking after their own lusts, and their mouth speaketh great swelling words, having men's person in admiration because of advantage. Enoch also warned them of the impending flood, and that Noah and his family would be the only humans to survive it. 2 Enoch 39. And Methuselah lived 187 years, and begat Lamech. Lamech lived 182 years, and begat a son. And he called his name Noah, saying, This same shall comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands, because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. Genesis 5:25. 28 through 29. Because Adam and Eve were the new and improved species of mankind, their descendants lived as perpetual youths for more than 100 years before they were able to bear children, then for hundreds of years more after that. However, that longevity decreased as time passed. The descendants of Adam up to Noah had lived between 65 and 182 years, each before they reached a level of biological maturity that allowed them to produce offspring, or to beget. Yet Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Genesis 5:32. In this account of Noah's birth, information in the Ethiopian Apocalypse of Enoch tells why the people knew Noah was special, and it also explains why he lived for such a long time before producing children. And his body was white as snow and red as a rose, and the hair of his head as white as wool, and his demdema, his curly hair, or his afro, beautiful. And as for his eyes, when he opened them, the whole house glowed like the sun. And when he arose from the hands of the midwife, he opened his mouth and spoke to the Lord with righteousness. Lamech was afraid of him and fled. And he said to Methuselah, "He is not like an ordinary human being, but he looks like the children of the angels of heaven to me. His form is different, and he is not like us. His eyes are like the rays of the sun, and his face glorious. It does not seem to me that he is of me, but of angels." 106, 2-6 excerpts. And his body was white as snow and red as a rose. Now Methuselah knew where to find the transformed Enoch, and went to a dwelling place among the angels, at the ends of the earth, on Lamech's behalf. Enoch explained to his son the purpose of this special being called Noah. There shall be a great destruction upon the earth, and there shall be a deluge for 1 year. And this son who has been born unto you shall be left upon the earth, and his 3 sons shall be saved when they who are upon the earth are dead. And upon the earth they shall give birth to giants, not of the spirit but of the flesh. There shall be a great plague upon the earth, and the earth shall be washed clean from all the corruption. Verses 16-18. Genesis 6 in Tanakh, the Holy Scriptures, reads, "When men began to increase on earth, and daughters were born to them, the divine beings, the Grigori, the watchers, the overseers, saw how beautiful the daughters of men were, and took wives from among those that pleased them. It was then that the Nephilim appeared on earth, when the divine beings cohabited with the daughters of men, who bore them offspring. They were the heroes of old, the men of renown." 6, 1-4 excerpts, and that's the Tanakh. Genesis 6:4 in the King James Bible reads, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children with them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown." Job 1:6. "Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them." The phrase sons of God means simply that God created them. So in that respect, Satan and his rebellious followers were all sons of God. Some of these fallen angels were the watchers, or those whose responsibility it was to monitor and supervise mankind's activities and progress in their assigned sectors of earth, and then report back to God. When Enoch was taken and placed in the 5th heaven, he saw them imprisoned there. Quote, Enoch 18, 1-4. "He saw many and countless soldiers called Grigori, of human appearance, and their size was greater than that of great giants. And they, the angels, said to me, These are the Grigori, who with their prince Sataniel rejected the Lord of light, and 200 myriads. And 3 of them went down on the earth from the Lord's throne to the place Hermon, Mount Hermon, on the northeast boundary of Palestine, and broke through their vows on the shoulder of the hill Hermon, and saw the daughters of men how good they are, and took to themselves wives, and befouled the earth with their deeds, who in all times of their age made lawlessness and mixing. And giants were born, and marvelous big men, and great enmity. The Grigori, who appeared like men, were biologically compatible with human females. Through sexual intercourse, they gave rise to a species of men whose flesh or physical constitution was corrupt, according to the precepts of God. As a result of this mixing of two different species, mutations occurred, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. After the rebellious watchers took wives unto themselves, they began to teach their wives and their offspring. From Scripture, they taught humans eternal secrets which are performed in heaven, the art of making swords, knives, shields and breastplates, bracelets, decorations, all kinds of precious stones, and alchemy. And there were many wicked ones, and they committed adultery, and all their conduct became corrupt. Amazras, as opposed to Amaros, so because this is a different reading, taught incantation, and the cutting of roots, astrology, and the knowledge of the signs, and the seeing of the stars, the course of the moon, as well as the deception of man. Furthermore, these giants consumed the produce of all the people until the people detested feeding them. So the giants turned against the people in order to eat them. And they began to sin against birds, wild beasts, reptiles, and fish. And the flesh was devoured one by the other, and they drank blood. Then Michael, Seraphel, and Gabriel observed carefully from the sky, and they saw much blood being shed upon the earth. That's 1 Enoch 7-9 excerpts. This reading is from a different translation, apparently, that has slightly different wording. Enoch told his sons that he had also been informed that the children of the watchers would arise again after the flood, just as God had told him. After that, so this is Scripture again, 1 Enoch 106:19. After that, the flood, there shall occur still greater oppression than that which was filled upon the earth the first time. For I do know the mysteries of the Holy One. For he, the Lord, revealed them to me, and made me know, and I have read them in the heavenly tablets. 1 Enoch 106:19. According to Berosus, the ancient Sumerian king Gilgamesh, circa 2750 BC, was renowned for his great strength, but also for his cruelty and oppressiveness towards his subjects. He claimed that he was 1/3 human and 2/3 God, and should therefore not have to die and afterwards be consigned to the netherworld. He thus embarked on a perilous journey in a futile effort to find the secrets of immortality, but ultimately failed. Several Assyrian Babylonian bas-reliefs depict Gilgamesh as being a giant. On one he is holding a lion, and on the other watering a bull. In direct proportion to the size of these modern-day animals, his height was at least twice that of the average human male of today, even more if he was watering a bull. It is written in the Gilgamesh epic that when Enkidu, Gilgamesh's companion, approached a group of shepherds, they said to each other, "He, Enkidu, is like Gilgamesh, twice the size of ordinary men." The Fairy, Tablet 2, Column 1, lines 11 and 12. An archaic stele housed in the Louvre Museum shows the Assyrio-Babylonian god Shamash seated while a human female waters his sacred plant. The stele of Hammurabi, also kept at the Louvre, likewise shows Shamash seated while he dictates his laws to Hammurabi. On both stela, even while seated, one can see that this god was of giant proportions. A votive relief of the great god Asclepius and his family shows humans paying homage to him. Again, in direct proportion to the human in this illustration, the height of this god would be at about 8 feet. Likewise, a votive relief showing the goddess Persephone pouring a liquid atop the head of an initiate renders her to be at least twice the height and 3 times the size of the human cult member. The same holds true for Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, portrayed on a relief sculpture with human horsemen or hunters. A rock painting at Diana's Vow Farm near Rusape, Rhodesia, has been dated back to 3000 BC after the flood. It depicts a crowd of people gathering around a large, centralized humanoid figure that is about 6 times their height. This figure, depicted as wearing a mask or of actually having the head of an antelope, is most likely a god. In many ancient cultures, the resident god was synonymous with kingship, just as it was with Gilgamesh, a god-king. Other post-Diluvian giants are mentioned in Numbers 13, 32, and 33 as inhabiting the land of Canaan, to the west of the Jordan River. And they, scouts, brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched into the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof. And all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, Grigori, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. The sons of Anak were named in Joshua 15 and 14 as being Sheshai, Ahiman, and Talmai. These giants were cannibals, as were the Cyclops described in Homer's Odyssey, who were created by Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. These would resurface after the Great Flood, as some of the descendants of Noah fell again under the influence of Satan and his legions of demons. The post-Diluvian giants built habitats for themselves, most notably at Petra, located in the desert of what is now southern Jordan. They dwelt in the land of Ammon, as is written in Deuteronomy 2. Giants dwelt therein in old time, and the Ammonites called them Zemzumim, a great people, and many, and tall as the Anakim, the Anak. But the Lord destroyed them, the Anakim, before them, and they, the Zamzumim, succeeded them, and dwelt in their stead. That's 20 and 21 of Joshua. And as is mentioned, the Satans created creatures whose antecessors also resurfaced after the cataclysmic flood. These hybrids are the creatures of mythology: the mermaids, centaurs, cyclops, griffins, basilisks, dragons, leviathan, the Lernaean hydra, the dogs of hell, Orthos and Cerberus, the minotaur, and the like. The apocryphal book Baruch notes the destruction of the hybrid giants. There were the giants famous from the beginning, that were of so great stature and so expert in war. Those did not the Lord choose, neither gave he the way of knowledge unto them. But they were destroyed because they had no wisdom, and perished through their own foolishness. 3:26 and 28. That's the book of Baruch. In his epic poem, the Odyssey, Greek poet Homer describes the giants as louts without a law to bless them, who lived in isolation from each other, and who dealt out rough justice to wife and child. The Greek version of 3 Baruch puts the number of giants that were destroyed at 409,000. It is important to note here that regardless of the physical form of any human being today, the souls of the victims of Satan's wickedness against all humanity are saved if they believe and trust in God and follow his commandments. Before Enoch was taken for the final time, he admonished his sons to remain in the priesthood of Almighty God. And I swear to you, yea, that there has been no man in his mother's womb, but that already before, even to each one there is a place prepared for the repose of that soul, and a measure fixed how much it is intended that a man be tried in this world. Yes, children, deceive not yourselves, for there has been previously prepared a place for every soul of man, and every grievous and cruel yoke that come upon you, bear all for the sake of the Lord, and thus you will find your reward in the day of judgment. 2 Enoch 49 through 52 excerpts. During that age of human degeneration, the population on Earth had grown rapidly to nearly 6 million. God had decided initially to destroy all living creatures from the face of the Earth via a global flood, and to thereby put into effect a total recall of all human souls. However, Noah, like Adam, was a special creation, and he and his family were selected to survive that mass extinction. Noah and his family were found to be perfect in their generations. They therefore met God's 2 basic criteria of survival for that time. First, they were at once both spiritually and physically fit, meaning neither their spirit nor their genetic makeup had been adulterated by that evil species, those hellish beings, the fallen angels. And second, the family was genetically varied enough to continue to produce humans with the proper attributes necessary to repopulate the entire earth. God sent Asuriel, his angel, to the son of Lamech to warn him about the impending deluge, and that he and his family would be preserved. And God saw that the wickedness of mankind was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. Hud, chapter 11 of the Holy Quran, verse 39 reads, "And he, Noah, started making the ark, and every time the chiefs of his people passed him by, they mocked at him. And he said, If now you mock at us, the time is coming when we shall mock at you, even just as you mock now." The Chaldean Persian Sibyl was Sambeth, Noah's daughter-in-law. She recorded how before the flood, Noah had urged the people of his time to repent their sins, but they sneered at him, each one calling him demented, a man gone mad. First Sibyl, lines 171 and 172. So that's the goddess Sibyl, and that was Noah's daughter-in-law. Noah, however, continued pleading with the people, and even went so far as to tell them what would happen to them. "You will laugh with a bitter smile when this flood comes to pass. I say, the terrible and strange water of God. Whenever the abominable race of Rhea disappears, root and all in a single night, and the earth-shaking landquaker will scatter cities complete with their inhabitants, and the hiding places of the earth, and will undo walls, then also the entire world of innumerable men will die." Lines 182 through 190. The exploits and avatars of the ancient goddess Rhea, the daughter of Gaia and Uranus and sister and wife to Cronus, are noted in chapter 2 of this book. The abominable race of Rhea refers not only to her own offspring, Hera, Hestia, Demeter, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, but also to those who worshipped her and the other fallen angels. When God instructed Noah to take the clean beasts and fowls of the air by sevens, he meant 7 each of the male and 7 of the female for a total of 14, and yet they were 2 and 2. In this ark were 8 humans and creatures from every sector of earth. Every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, and every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. Genesis 7:14 and 15. The extinction that came about as a result of this global flood was a partial extinction, as God's post-diluvian life forms were the same as the antediluvian ones. Furthermore, the seventh-day extinction was not about completely eliminating and then recreating plant and animal life on Earth, as the Earth's ecosystems were already in equilibrium and there was no need for this. This was one about eliminating the hybrids that Satan created, and those humans who, through Satan's clever devices, had become physically and spiritually unfit and corrupt. And God saw that the wickedness of mankind was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Genesis 6:5. And he, Noah, started making the ark, and every time the chiefs of his people passed by him, they mocked at him. He said, "If now you mock at us, the time is coming when we shall mock at you, even just as you mock now." And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his own image, and called his name Seth. Genesis 5:3. Information in Book 2, Adam and Eve, explains that Seth was conceived, then born 7 years after the death of Abel. Adam also named Seth. That means God has heard my prayer, his sadness over Abel's death, and has delivered me out of my affliction. But it also means power and strength. Following the deaths of Adam and Eve, gathered together at the foot of the mountain in splendor, with horns and gorgeous dresses and horse races, committing all manner of abominations. Book 2, Adam and Eve, 28 13 and 14. By the time Enos was 800 years old, Cain, who had married his sister, Awan, in the Book of Jubilees, had a large progeny, for they married frequently, being given to animal lusts, until the land below the mountain was filled with them. Book 2, Adam and Eve 12:16. When Jared became the head of the family of Seth, he admonished his people to not descend. Seth became the head of the house of Adam. He and his descendants continued to live on God's holy mountain and continued on in the priesthood. After Seth died, the headship was then passed on to Enos, then to Kenan, to Mahalalel, to Jared, to Enoch, to Methuselah, to Lamech, and then to Noah, who begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. After the birth of Seth and actually his son Enos, then men began to invoke the Lord by name, Genesis 4:26, and thus began the establishment of deity worship and the struggle between evil and good on earth among mankind. The struggle in the Middle East between the children of Seth and the children of Cain was a microcosm. Satan and his fallen angels established their rule over the children of Cain and built a magnificent civilization at the foot of the mountain, complete with music and strong drink, which served to increase the lust among them. When Baruch asked to see the tree through which the serpent deceived Eve and Adam, an angel explained to Baruch that the tree was the grape, the vine. The tree is sinful desire, which Satan spread over Eve and Adam. And because of this, God has cursed the vine, because Satan had planted it, and by the vine he deceived the protoplast Adam and Eve. Satan and his co-conspirators bequeathed knowledge of the worst kind upon mankind. And when they were drunk, hatred and murder increased among them. Then sin increased among them greatly, until a man married his own daughter or mother, or the daughter of his father's sister, until there was no distinction of relationship, and they no longer knew what was iniquity. And Satan taught them to make dyeing stuffs for garments of diverse patterns, and made them understand how to dye crimson and purple and whatnot. And the sons of Cain who wrought all this, and shone in beauty and gorgeous apparel,